Alright guys, we're doing more fantasy baseball content. Here I have my bold predictions for the 2025 MLB season. But before we get into it, I want to thank you guys all for being here and supporting the channel. We hit the 2,500 subscriber goal after the last video, and for this one, I want to get to 3,000 subscribers by opening day. I know it might be a tall task, I know it's coming up very soon, but let's go guys. If you guys are watching this and you're not subscribed, please go down there and click that big red button, subscribe to the video. But alright, now let's get into it. First bold prediction, Bryce Miller will win the AL Cy Young Award. I've shied away from mentioning Miller too much on this channel, especially in the breakout pitcher video, because he was just so good last year. I don't even think it's worth considering him a breakout because he performed like one of the best pitchers in baseball for the final few months of the season and wound up as one of the top 10 pitchers in value for fantasy baseball. So again, not a breakout, but he's so good, and I still think there's another step in Miller, more so the consistency over a full year, to catapult him into that Cy Young conversation. And for this bold prediction, winning the Cy Young Award. The biggest key with Miller is that he has an incredible fastball. It sits mid to upper 90s, it has great shape, and he's really good at locating at the top of the strike zone and missing bats with it. It was so good that when he broke into the league as a rookie in 2023, he leaned on that fastball, threw it about 60% of the time, and was effective with it at first. Then hitters kind of got wise to the fact that he was basically only throwing fastballs and he had to adjust. But now he has fully adjusted. He has a full 7-pitch mix and one of the deepest arsenals in all of baseball. His first new toy was a splitter last season that really helped him out against left-handed batters. You could see him getting more comfortable with it as the season went on. Then towards the middle of last season, he developed a knuckle curveball with the help of reliever Michael Baumann, who was only a member of the Mariners for 50 days. But in that time, he taught Miller the grip to that pitch and he was throwing it in games just a few days later. He mastered that pitch remarkably quickly, and by August and September, when Miller was at his best, that was his third most thrown offering to left-handed batters. Learning that pitch truly changed his entire season. Now this spring training, he's working on a cutter to add another pitch to his bag against left-handed batters. It was really important for Miller to add more pitches he could throw against lefties, because when he was a rookie, they crushed him. For a 300 batting average and nearly 400 WOBA, it was not very good. But now with the splitter, knuckle curve, and soon to be cutter, he has a lot of ways to get lefties out. And that's great for Miller, because he already had a true 5-pitch mix against right-handed batters, with his fastball, sinker, splitter, sweeper, and tight slider. It's amazing that he already had one of the best fastballs in the league and has now developed one of the deepest arsenals in the whole league to support that fastball. It's also a big deal that he pitches in Seattle, which is one of the best parks in all of baseball for pitchers, boosting strikeouts and suppressing runs for the other team. He has sky-high potential, and I truly think he can win the Cy Young Award. Also, I want to let you guys know, last season in my bold predictions, I picked Logan Gilbert to win the Cy Young Award. Gilbert didn't quite win the award, but he did come in 6th and had an incredible breakout season. And the rest of these predictions didn't do that poorly either. But alright, moving on. My next bold prediction is that Elly Cruz will be a 10-win player this year, or accumulate 10 WAR. The only players to cross the 10 WAR threshold over the last 20 years on Baseball Reference are Mookie Betts, Mike Trout, and Aaron Judge. But if you include Fangraphs WAR, Bobby Witt got over that plateau last season with his remarkable year. One day I might want to do a video on the differences between B WAR and F WAR. I'm not sure, maybe we'll see where this channel winds up, but I do tend to use Fangraphs WAR over Baseball Reference WAR because first of all, Baseball Reference WAR uses defensive runs saved or DRS, while Fangraphs uses ultimate zone rating or UZR. Neither of those defensive metrics have proved to be that great, but I do lean towards UZR over DRS. Also, Fangraphs WAR uses WRC Plus instead of OPS Plus, which again, that's not really a huge difference, but I like WRC Plus a little bit more because it takes a bit more scientific of an approach to figure out a hitter's value rather than OPS Plus, which just simply uses their OPS and then regulates it for a player's home park. Again, they're not really that much different, but I'm giving a slight lean to Fangraphs. Again, not important here. Back to Elly Cruz. Everything's in front of Elly right now, and I'm really confident in him after the massive step forward he took last season. Remember before last year when there were some people out there saying, oh no, Elly Cruz, you might have to go back down to the minor leagues. He might not be able to hit major league pitching. Those people could not have been more wrong. The tools were very obvious in his rookie season 2023, but there were some questions about both his bat to ball and general on-base ability. Well, he quieted every single one of those questions last year and literally improved across the board. He made tons more contact, he drew more walks, he chased fewer pitches out of the strike zone, while also swinging more often at hittable pitches in the strike zone. On top of that, he was able to lift the ball more often and even pull the ball slightly more often. That jump from year 1 to year 2 reminded me a lot of the jump that Bobby Witt Jr. made between his first year in 2022 and his amazing sophomore season in 2023. It's just an elite player with elite pedigree and elite tools figuring out how to become a better baseball player on the fly. It was also very similar to Elly, where in Bobby Witt Jr.'s first season, he had about a 700 OPS with a couple flaws. Then he had the 800 OPS, just like Elly last year, and started to plug all the holes. And then Bobby Witt's third season in the league, he jumped up to nearly 1,000 OPS and had that 10 WAR season. That's what I see from Elly this year, especially because all the changes he made last year wound up giving him an amazing stat line. I mean, a 260 batting average and a 340 on base percentage, not even Elly Riley's most optimistic supporters would have said that going into last season. It's especially important considering his strikeout rate was still over 30%, he still swung and missed a ton, and he still barely pulled his fly balls. Those are some very big things that Elly can fix, and if he fixes them in a hurry, which I do believe he will, he can take that exact same quantum leap that Bobby Witt took, become one of the true superstars in the league, become an MVP candidate, and become a 10-win player. And something I like a lot is that we are seeing the signs of some of these improvements during spring training. Elly has been swinging slightly less often and swinging and missing significantly less often. Good things. But another big part of accumulating WAR is defense. And I think Elly right now has probably one of the biggest gaps between public perception of his defense and an analytical understanding of his defense. Because he did lead the league in errors last year. Very, very bad. And he especially struggled in his consistency with throwing the ball, which is not a good sign. But if you look at all of his defensive metrics, he got to more balls at shortstop than almost any player in the league. And he has a cannon for an arm. A lot of this comes back to mental mistakes for Elly and just being able to focus and repeat those throwing mechanics, which is something that I see him doing as he matures as a player. So I think the defense is going to come together. He's going to cross the 30 home run threshold. He's going to raise that batting average to the 280, 290 range, and then the on base to 360, 370 on top of it. Get that OPS to about 950, and boom, right there, that's a 10-win player, Elly De La Cruz. All right, next up, we're getting very bold. I think the Athletics are going to make the playoffs. The biggest thing here for the A's is that the American League stinks. There might be only 3 or 4 above average teams in the entire league. So similar to last season, there's going to wind up being a cluster of teams kind of hanging around 500, and it just really depends on who gets hot at the right time, just like the Tigers did. And again, checking back to those bold predictions I made last year, I had the Tigers in the playoffs. But this roster, especially the A's lineup, has quietly gotten very, very good. I can see Brent Rooker and Lawrence Butler combining for 80 home runs. Then JJ Bleday and Shea Langoliers are very solid players with significant upside. Then Jacob Wilson and Tyler Soderstrom are fun breakout picks and young players with legit potential. Zach Geloff is hurt right now, but when he's back and healthy, he has very fun tools to dream on and good prospect pedigree. Then you got Denzel Clark and Colby Thomas, a couple of outfielders they have in AAA that have breakout potential and some big-time tools. Also, their number 4 overall pick last season, Nick Kurtz, got to AA last year, is murdering the baseball this spring, and I can see the A's fast-tracking him to contribute to them in the second half if they are in the race. This genuinely could be a fringy top 5 offense in the entire league if things break right. Another reason this offense can be so good, I think there's a good chance their new ballpark in Sacramento plays very hitter-friendly. On the flip side, that could hurt their rotation, which I think is the big weakness for this team. They signed Luis Severino, gave him big money to be their horse, but he only threw a lot of innings last year before being one of the most injury-riddled pitchers in baseball. Same goes for Jeffrey Springs, who they traded for, who's also had some big issues with injuries, and might not even be able to keep his fastball above 90 miles an hour. Then they have Osvaldo Bido, who's pretty fun, JP Sears, Joey Estes, and Mitch Spence, who are back of the rotation, kind of decent depth guys, but after that, it falls off of a cliff quickly for the A's. But then you get to their bullpen. I think sneakily, this could be one of the best bullpens in the American League. It's led by Mason Miller, who might be the best reliever in baseball, just hands down. Michel Otoñez right now is on the IL with a shoulder impingement, but hopefully he's back soon. He throws gas. Jose Leclerc and Tyler Ferguson, also gas. Then they have Justin Sterner, who was a waiver pickup from the Rays, who has a pretty solid fastball cutter combo and has struck out the world this spring. Things do need to break right. A lot of those guys are pretty injury prone. Otoñez is injured right now, but if they all stay healthy, again, that's a unit that could be one of the top 5 bullpens in the American League. These are bold predictions. I don't think it's very likely the A's make the playoffs, but I can really see things clicking for this team and being the surprise team in the American League this year, grabbing that playoff berth. Next up, would not be a James Shiano video if there wasn't a mention of Oneil Cruz, and I think he's going to have 40 home runs and 30 stolen bases this season. Again, if you guys been sticking with me for all my videos, you might not think this is bold because of how much I've been pumping this guy's tires, but truly, this is some of the nuttiest raw power in the league. This will be the 4th time I'm giving this spiel, but I have to give it again. Last season, Oneil Cruz hit the 4 hardest hit balls in all of baseball, 8 of the 11 hardest hit balls in all of baseball, 15 of the 30th hardest hit balls in all of baseball. Then he had 24 balls in play that were hit harder than 115 miles an hour, where the next closest player to him only had 17. Also, Oneil Cruz hit 4 of his 20 home runs further than 450 feet last season. The only other players with more were Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani, who each had 50 home runs. The power is ridiculous. All he has to do is take one more jump in his contact rate, like he did before last season, and then I can see the 40 home runs coming relatively easily. And then with the stolen bases, he's clearly getting more confidence as a base stealer. He only attempted 8 before the All-Star break last season, but then went 15 for 15 after the break over the final 2 months of the season. And then this spring, he's attempted 7 more. He is ready to run. He is ready to hit for power. Oneil Cruz has all the tools of a player that can hit 40 home runs and steal 30 bags. Next up, possibly my most diabolical take in this entire video, Shohei Ohtani and Roki Sasaki combined to throw under 100 innings in the major leagues this season. The crux of this one is that the Dodgers are by far the best team in baseball and also not stupid. The regular season does not matter for them. They are going to win their division by a landslide. It's already a foregone conclusion. There's no reason for them to push the 2 of these players who are such a huge part of both their playoff plans and their future plans. Now, starting with Ohtani, the injury injury to his non-throwing shoulder last year he suffered in the World Series was pretty serious, and he had to take a significant amount of time off of rehabbing from throwing this winter to rehab that shoulder so he can hit on time this season, especially because the Dodgers opened their season 2 weeks before the rest of the league. So Ohtani threw a bullpen session late February, and he hasn't thrown one in a month, and is supposed to throw one on Saturday. Let's see how that goes. In the last one, he sat about 92 to 94 miles an hour, far below his max, and also his first bullpen session in such a long time. He's either the best or second best hitter in the baseball. The Dodgers are aware of that, know where his ceiling is, especially in a regular season where they do not have a lot to lose. I would be very surprised if they push him a lot pitching. Maybe he gets a few innings towards the end of the year, but I think that's it. And then for Sasaki, long term, I have total confidence this guy's going to be total freak and potential ace. His splitter already looks like one of the best pitches in baseball. But after that, he leaves a lot to be desired. Despite some high-end velocity, his fastball shape is not very good. And last year in the MVP, it got hit pretty hard. And in his opening start in Tokyo, it did not miss many bats. On top of the poor shape, his command isn't very good. On top of his command not being very good, he doesn't have a third pitch. Can't throw a breaking ball, doesn't have a cutter, doesn't have a sinker. There's no variation really right now with Sasaki besides that amazing splitter and okay fastball, despite really good velocity. It really just seems like Sasaki has a lot of work to do to reach his potential, which is still huge potential. It's important to remember that he's still only 23 years old. 23 years old is very young for pitchers. Last season, only 7 pitchers that were 23 years old or younger threw at least 100 innings. And out of those 7, only one of those pitchers had an ERA below 4, and that was Paul Skeens. And Roki Sasaki is just not Paul Skeens. No one is. He also had some arm issues his last few years in the MPB. There's no reason for the Dodgers to push this guy. I can see him getting to 100 innings, best case scenario, but most likely sitting between 60 and 80. And then put that on top of the 20 or 30 I think Ohtani will wind up throwing by the end of the season. These guys are going to come in under 100 innings. Maybe Yoshinobu Yamamoto or Blake Snell become the horse of that rotation. Then they have tons of guys like Landon Knack who are going to be able to throw 100 to 120 innings and fill in all the cracks. They are too smart and too good to push either of these players this season. Next up, shout out the Mets behind me. Clay Holmes will be an all-star. Holmes has fully proven himself as a starting pitcher this spring. For this transition he made to seem real, he had to check 3 boxes. He had to show he could throw more pitches, he had to show he can get left-handed batters out consistently, and he had to show that he could sustain velocity deep into games. Well, this spring, his new cutter and kick changeup looked nasty. Both of those pitches, along with a fastball that he's now willing to throw, helped him a ton versus left-handed batters, and in his last spring start, he got up to 88 pitches, and in that final inning, he was still touching 94, 95 miles an hour with his sinker. Check, check, check. Clay Holmes is a legitimate starting pitcher. He's checked every box. He seems comfortable. He seems confident. The Mets seem confident in his ability. He had a 0.93 ERA in the spring, which, we don't hold spring stats that closely, but it's really nice to see a guy be good rather than bad. And lastly, to help him with his all-star candidacy, the Mets will have to lean on Holmes early in the season with the injuries to Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas. Maybe there's a point in the middle of the season or the second half of the season where he needs to take a week or 2 off, get skipped, takes the phantom IL stint similar to Reynaldo Lopez last season, but the Mets will be leaning on Holmes for the first few months. The stuff is legit. The arsenal's legit. He's going to be a very solid starting pitcher in the first half and make the all-star team. Next up, another pitching all-star. Reese Olson is going to be an American League all-star this season. If you guys watched my video 2 videos ago, starting pitcher breakouts, you'll see the huge shout out I gave Reese Olson there. What makes Olson so good is that he has a sensational slider and changeup. His command is so precise, so pinpoint that he can spot those pitches wherever he wants against hitters from each side of the plate. And each of those 2 pitches had better than a 20% swing strike rate last season. Also this spring, he's been working on a curveball that can deepen his bag against left-handed hitters. The only thing holding Olson back is that his fastball just simply isn't that good. It's not very good shape. It's not above average velocity. It leaves a lot to be desired, which puts a lot of pressure on his secondary pitches. Again, they're great, but this spring, Olson was throwing a tick or 2 harder for most of his starts. I don't know if that's real because for spring, starts are usually abbreviated, so it's easier for guys to kind of let it rip and throw harder. But if he can get that 1 or 2 miles an hour on that fastball this season, there is nothing stopping this guy from being a monster, possibly even getting down ballot Cy Young votes. He's also great at mitigating hard contact. He gets tons of ground balls, and Detroit is a fantastic park to pitch in. Reese Olson is a smash this year and will be an all-star. Next up, back to the Dodgers. Kind of a weird one here. Super relevant for your guys' deep leagues and fantasy, but Tommy Edman will lead the Dodgers in plate appearances. This is kind of the same vibe as the Roki and Ohtani take, but with the Dodgers hitters. We already know that Freddie Freeman's going to get some load management this year, resting his sore ankle, not playing day games after night games, and taking a few days off, especially early in the season. Then we have all these stories about Mookie Betts dropping down to 150 pounds and not being able to keep food down since the team was in Tokyo over a week ago. There's also a good chance Ohtani gets a few load management days off as he continues to rehab as a pitcher, especially, again, like I said with the pitchers, considering the fact that the Dodgers are going to steamroll the regular season this year. It almost does not matter who they have on the field. Their roster is so good that they're going to crush people. Then we get back to Edman, how he's going to lead this team in plate appearances. He's a switch hitter, and the Dodgers last year were comfortable starting him against both right-handed pitchers and left-handed pitchers. Also last season, the Dodgers routinely played Edman at either shortstop or center field. Those are the 2 most important positions for a team defensively, and the Dodgers trust Edman at both of them, keeping him in the lineup very consistently. Also, in the Tokyo series, without Betts and Freeman, Edman was hitting second in those games. So now we have someone with incredible defensive value, no platoon splits, and will often be hitting high in the order. That is the recipe for someone who's going to accumulate tons of plate appearances, and Edman will lead the Dodgers. Next up, back to the Mets, Pete Alonso will drive in 140 runs this season. Aaron Judge had 144 RBIs last season, and he was the first player to cross the 140 RBI threshold since 2009 when both Prince Fielder and Ryan Howard did it. And can you guys guess what Aaron Judge last year and Pete Alonso this year have in common? You got it. They both hit behind Juan Soto. Juan Soto is one of the best players in all of baseball at getting on base consistently. And when you're hitting behind that gets on base more than anybody else in the league, you have a lot of chances to drive in runs. Then you add in the fact that Francisco Lindor is going to also be hitting leadoff ahead of Pete Alonso and Soto. You have one player that gets on base 35% of the time, another player that gets on base 43% of the time, and tons of ducks on the pond for one of the best power hitters in baseball, Pete Alonso. Also going for Pete, this Mets lineup is just really good in general, so it's going to be turning over a lot, and that's more at-bats over the course of the season and more opportunities for Pete to drive in runs. Pete already has seasons of 118 RBIs, 120 RBIs, and 131 RBIs, so he's demonstrated this elite RBI ability. And just to pull the curtain back on Pete a little bit, his season last year was very disappointing. He knows he did not deliver on his first chance in the contract year last year. He's an amazing competitor, he's an incredible baseball player, this Mets team is nasty. Pete knows that this is the year that he's got to make his money, and he's going to drive in 140 runs. Next up, Jake Burger is going to hit 40 home runs. First, the big thing going for Burger is he has A++ power. His barrel rate, his bat speed, his average exit velocity, and his pulled fly ball rate were all in the top 80th percentile of all hitters last season. It's also easy to forget that Burger started very slow last year, but then hit 20 home runs over his final 66 games, showing that he can hit a lot of home runs very quickly. It's even more impressive considering that Burger had that massive home run barrage when he was a player on the Marlins. Marlins Park is one of the most difficult parks in all of baseball for a right-handed hitter to hit a home run, and they had one of the worst lineups in baseball, where if he would have stayed on that team this year, he would have been projected to be possibly the only hitter in the whole lineup that was better than league average. Now, Burger is a Texas Ranger, where their home park is the fourth easiest for right-handed hitters to hit home runs, and that lineup is probably the best in baseball, where most days they can go 9 deep if hitters are better than league average. There was a great piece a few years ago by Mike Petriello about what team Shohei Ohtani was going to choose, talking about how much it helps hitters at the plate, how much better they hit when there are guys on base ahead of them. Burger will have plenty of guys on base ahead of him. So far this spring, he's been hitting about 3rd, 4th, or 5th in the Texas order. That's going to be behind Marcus Semien, Wyatt Langford, sometimes Jock Peterson, Corey Seager, some elite baseball players who get on base very often. Burger's going to rip the cover off the ball this year, and there's a good chance he puts out 40. I also should mention, I am not a gambling man, but if I were a gambling man, I would look at Jake Burger to lead the league in home runs at 80-1 and think to myself, that should probably be more like 30 or 40-1. There's good value in that Burger bet. All right, now guys, my last bold prediction, the Baltimore Orioles will miss the playoffs. Straight up, there are just bad vibes surrounding this team right now. They got swept in the playoffs after their torrid first half. They let Corbin Burns walk out the door and replaced him with old men in that rotation. So after a season where they took a massive step forward, but then had a really bad taste in their mouth at the end of it, they got worse rather than better in the offseason. On top of that, when spring training began, their presumed ace, Grayson Rodriguez, went down, leaving their rotation heading into the season with Zach Eflin, Charlie Morton, Tomoyuki Sugano, Dean Kramer, and Cade Povich. Not exactly a murderer's row. And that's at the same time, their fences will be moving in. I would be concerned about that rotation if I was an Orioles fan. It's not exactly the worst rotation in baseball. I really like Zach Eflin. I kind of like Cade Povich. I think Sugano might be pretty good. But again, there's really no top-end talent there. It's kind of an entire mix of 3s and 4s, with Eflin maybe being able to sneak himself into being a 2, and barely any velocity to speak of up and down the whole thing. And then to make matters worse, Gunnar Henderson has not played in weeks with a little intercostal oblique strain. He's resuming baseball activities, and they say he's going to be back soon, only missing a few games at the beginning of the season, but those injuries can linger, and he is so far and away the best hitter in their lineup. If they go without him for an extended period of time, this offense goes from really good to just pretty good. If an offense that goes from really good to pretty good has to support a rotation that might not be very good, it's a recipe for disaster. But their bullpen is still good, the American League is still horrible. Overall, this is still a good team, but there's a good chance that they wind up just around 500-ish and kind of in this glut of American League teams at the bottom of the wild card race, fighting tooth and nail to the end of the year. Again, it's just a bad vibe with this team right now heading into the season. But all right, guys, that's the end of my bold predictions. Drop some comments down below of bold predictions you guys have this season. Thank you all again so much for being with me here and supporting the channel. Hit that like button down there if you enjoyed the video. Please click that big red subscribe button if you want to see more content. Season's about to start up. I'm incredibly excited. We're going to have content rolling all season long. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time.